11. Briefly, then, there are two ways of regarding the classical, the materialistic and the ideological. By the former, it is asserted that the sinking of one scale pan has its cause in the rising of the other, and it is shown that this occurs invariably, truly a striking theorem. And in this juxtaposing of cause and effect, we naturally find the social and sexual, at all events the purely political, facts classed as causes, and the religious, intellectual, and, so far as the materialist tolerates them as facts at all, the artistic as effects. On the other hand, the ideologues show that the rising of one scale pan follows from the sinking of the other, which they are able to prove, of course, with equal exactitude. This done, they lose themselves in cults, mysteries, customs, in the secrets of the strophe and the line, throwing scarcely a side glance at the commonplace daily life, for them an unpleasant consequence of earthly imperfection. Each side, with its gaze fixed on causality, demonstrates that the other side either cannot or will not understand the true linkages of things, and each ends by calling the other blind, superficial, stupid, absurd or frivolous, oddities or philistines. It shocks the ideologue if anyone deals with Hellenic finance problems and instead of, for example, telling us the deep meanings of the Delphic oracle, describes the far-reaching money operations which the oracle priests undertook with their accumulated treasures. The politician, on the other hand, has a superior smile for those who waste their enthusiasm on ritual formulae and the dress of Attic youths, instead of writing a book adorned with up-to-date catchwords about antique class struggles. The one type is foreshadowed from the very outset in Petrarch. It created Florence and Weimar and the Western classicism. The other type appears in the middle of the 18th century, along with the rise of civilized, economic megalopolitan politics, and England is therefore its birthplace. Grote. Footnote. English not possessing the adjective-forming freedom of German, we are compelled to coin a word for the rendering of großstatisch, an adjective not only frequent, but of emphatic significance in the author's argument. Translator. End of footnote. At bottom, the opposition is between the conceptions of culture man and those of civilization man, and it is too deep, too essentially human, to allow the weaknesses of both standpoints alike to be seen or overcome. The materialist himself is on this point an idealist. He too, without wishing or desiring it, has made his views dependent upon his wishes. In fact, all our finest minds, without exception, have bowed down reverently before the picture of the classical, abdicating in this one instance alone their function of unrestricted criticism. The freedom and power of classical research are always hindered, and its data obscured, by a certain almost religious awe. In all history there is no analogous case of one culture making a passionate cult of the memory of another. Our devotion is evidenced yet again in the fact that since the Renaissance 1,000 years of history have been undervalued so that an ideal Middle Age may serve as a link between ourselves and antiquity. We Westerners have sacrificed on the classical altar the purity and independence of our art, for we have not dared to create without a side glance at the sublime exemplar. We have projected our own deepest spiritual needs and feelings onto the classical picture. Some day a gifted psychologist will deal with this most fateful illusion and tell us the story of the classical that we have so consistently reverenced since the days of Gothic. Few theses would be more helpful for the understanding of the Western soul from Otto III, the first victim of the South, to Nietzsche, the last. Goethe, on his Italian tour, speaks with enthusiasm of the buildings of Palladio, whose frigid and academic work we today regard very sceptically. But when he goes on to Pompeii, he does not conceal his dissatisfaction in experiencing a strange, half unpleasant impression, and what he has to say on the temples of Paestum and Segista, masterpieces of Hellenic art, is embarrassed and trivial. Palpably, when classical antiquity in its full force met him face to face, he did not recognize it. It is the same with all others. Much that was classical they chose not to see, and so they saved their inward image of the classical, which was in reality the background of a life ideal that they themselves had created and nourished with their heart's blood, a vessel filled with their own world-feeling, a phantom, an idol. The audacious descriptions of Aristophanes, Juvenal, or Petronius of life in the classical cities, the southern dirt and riffraff, terrors and brutalities, pleasure boys and phrynes, phallus worship and imperial orgies, excite the enthusiasm of the student and the dilettante, who find the same realities in the world cities of today too lamentable and repulsive to face. In the cities life is bad. There are too many of the lustful. Also sprach Zarathustra. They commend the state sense of the Romans, but despise the man of today who permits himself any contact with public affairs. There is a type of scholar whose clarity of vision comes under some irresistible spell when it turns from a frock coat to a toga, from a British football ground to a Byzantine circus, from a transcontinental railway to a Roman road in the Alps, from a 30-knot destroyer to a trireme, from Prussian bayonets to Roman spears. Nowadays, even from a modern engineer's Suez Canal to that of a pharaoh. He would admit a steam engine as a symbol of human passion and an expression of intellectual force if it were Hero of Alexandria who invented it, not otherwise. To such it seems blasphemous to talk of Roman central heating or bookkeeping in preference to the worship of the great mother of the gods. But the other school sees nothing but these things. It thinks it exhausts the essence of this culture, alien as it is to ours, by treating the Greeks as simply equivalent, and it obtains its conclusions by means of simple factual substitutions, ignoring altogether the classical soul. That there is not the slightest inward correlation between the things meant by republic, freedom, property, and the like then and there, and the things meant by such words here and now, it has no notion whatever. It makes fun of the historians of the age of Goethe, who honestly expressed their own political ideals in classical history forms, and revealed their own personal enthusiasms in vindications or condemnations of lay figures named Lycurgus, Brutus, Cato, Cicero, Augustus. But it cannot itself write a chapter without reflecting the party opinion of its morning paper. It is, however, much the same whether the past is treated in the spirit of Don Quixote or in that of Sancho Panza. Neither way leads to the end. In sum, each school permits itself to bring into high relief that part of the classical which best expresses its own views. Nietzsche, the pre-Socratic Athens; the economists, the Hellenistic period; the politicians, Republican Rome; poets, the imperial age. Not that religious and artistic phenomena are more primitive than social and economic, any more than the reverse. For the man who in these things has won his unconditional freedom of outlook beyond all personal interests whatsoever, there is no dependence, no priority, no relation of cause and effect, no differentiation of value or importance. That which assigns relative ranks amongst the individual detail facts is simply the greater or less purity and force of their form language, their symbolism, beyond all questions of good and evil, high and low, useful and ideal.